Call the meeting to order. Start with roll call.
Commissioner Ellen?
Present.
Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Siragusa?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts? Here. Commissioner Stallings?
Here.
Commissioner Orr?
Here.
And Mayor Pinkinen.
Here. All right, thank you. Item number 2 at the.
We do have Christmas in the Park people all dressed up,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
You want to do them first?
First, and I think there's a video.
Identified
Oh, okay.
threats. In the wind.
I'll do that as the first study item, okay?
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
At the commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern from the regular session agenda.
I just got one. Today is Commissioner Orr's birthday, and if you guys would join me in wishing him a happy birthday by singing to him. 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Commissioner. Happy birthday to you.
Great job. All right. Any others?
I wanted to bring up just a couple of things on the consent because these are big deals, and we're from what I understand, we're just a pass through on this. I saw the newspaper article, I've written all the documents, but with the air conditioning system at the Y, that's a real big deal. Am I on the right agenda?
Which one are you on?
Yeah.
8? 7-1. 7-1?
And so there were, one of them was at the YWCA, and the other one was somewhere else. Oh, CDSA got their air conditioning.
Yeah.
And we're just a pass-through for those monies, isn't that right? We're just
Yes,
kind
is it coming from
we're just
CDBG?
putting it out right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I didn't want anybody to think that we had just given them, $300,000 to put in new air conditioning.
It's the good news story of that $2 million we got. Scott, you want to update them on that CB2 stuff?
You bet. So on the $3 million grant we got from the state of Oklahoma, CB2 funds, we've given about $1 million to CDSA and Catholic Charities for rent and utility assistance, and the remaining $2 million we earmarked for some building rehab, and we have to have a COVID tieback to it. And one of the easy things to do is do HVAC systems for people who need to redo their HVAC systems. And so we put out requests, people fill out applications, and we've got a couple of them coming up that are big that we had to put out to bid. Now, one thing that is a challenge for us is all of these funds like this, they come with, hey, you need to follow Section 3 guidelines. You need to follow Davis-Bacon prevailing wages. And so there's a lot of extra work that Laura and I and some other staff members are going to have to keep tabs on to do this. But the good news story is there are several nonprofits that are going to be receiving, quite a bit of brand new HVAC equipment.
Good.
I think the one that's on there, we had to pull one of them until the next agenda because They didn't have all of their registration complete with the sam.gov website.
Well, that's what I was seeing missing in that.
So we ended up pulling one of them in between. But we've got one on there. The other one will be on there at the next agenda,
Okay.
the next meeting.
So it's a big deal because these folks come to CDBG and we've only got so much money. And when they show up with a need for an entire HVAC system for these huge buildings, we can't help them with that. But I remember somebody saying, I think we've got another idea for that. So this is that result. And it's an absolute game changer because they wouldn't be able to operate without, HVAC. That's just all there is to it. So it's a big deal. And the trail going to the Prairie View School, I think that's great if it comes to fruition. I know a lot of these things that are on this consent items are, we're just guaranteeing that we can participate if there's a need for that. And so, so many times we don't get to bring up what's in the consent, and I wanted to get that out there tonight early in case there was any trouble.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
thank you.
We all get to read a couple hundred pages of homework before, but everybody else doesn't get that, so.
Right.
Yeah. All righty, good. Any other items from regular meeting? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to study items. Actually, I want to start with item 3.4 on the agenda, discuss Christmas and Parks special event.
Hi, good evening. I'm Karen. I'm the special event coordinator with the City of Enid, and I want to talk to you guys tonight about what we're working on right now, which is Christmas in the Park. In the past, we've done a big 4-day event. We're condensing it down to one big in-person day. It'll be Saturday, December 3rd at Meadow Lake, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., free hot chocolate, free s'mores. We've got games. Kiwanis will be open. It's going to be a fantastic night to come and hang with the family and make some memories. We also will have 3 different drives going on that night. We always do Toys for Tots. We're going to continue that one. So the unwrapped new toys are welcome there. And then we're doing a diaper drive for CDSA. You bring diapers, wipes, and those are distributed through them throughout our community. And the last one is the senior drive. They collect toiletries to go out to various locations for the seniors. So we chose 3 to give back to the community this year, and we're hoping for some support. I have a video that we made today to help get the word out on that we can play for you now. And then I also brought some friends.
Okay. Bring them in.
This year at Christmas in the Park, Santa and his elves will host 3 charity drives. New unwrapped toys will go to Toys for Tots.
This is much better than the Halloween tree.
Toiletries for the seniors will be distributed at several areas of facilities. Diapers of all sizes for infants and toddlers will be distributed by CDSA. Drop-off locations will be located at Meadow Lake Park during Christmas in the Park, Saturday, December the 3rd from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Bring your family, meet Santa, have fun, and please donate to the drive of your choice.
So that's all we have. That's what we're working on. So.
All right.
Thousands of people come through here to see this, and it's a big deal. It's all volunteer work from the City of Enid employees, and they stand out there in any kind of weather, and they do this for the residents, and that's just a huge, super big deal. Thank you all so much for your effort. Thank you.
All right. There you go.
Santa Claus, before you leave, we may have some wish lists. I think one of them is, we've been a really good city council and city this year. We'd like to have a movie theater, entertainment complex, and a clothing department store. Could you bring that with us?
That's easy, coming this way.
Hi, Kim.
All righty. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Coop, you're going to have your hands full today. Quarterly VDA update from Mike Cooper, number 41 himself.
Good evening, 47 and City Council. It's always good to be here, good to be in town. Good to see Santa, City Council singing. Hey, you can't get better than that. Oh, and I saw the tree come into town yesterday and saw that it got put up. So always good to be here. So it's been a lot of media about what I'm going to talk about, but I kind of wanted to tell you where we're at on most everything and kind of tell you how we got here. Because as you know, it's always about long-range, short-range plan that we have. We have the authority, the Advanced Development Authority, that kind of is organized to figure out what those long-range, short-range plans are and how we affect them to make Vance the premier pilot training base that it is and continue to make it strong in the future. So the long-range plan was, get the runway out at Woodring so they could have a fourth runway that they could utilize as they do for training purposes. It'll also be very helpful when they start tearing out the middle runway. So it's a good project. But if you look at mission for what they do, that was huge to do that. We built a hangar, built an apron, parking apron, all of those things, the new terminal and all that. So all that's been going on the last several years. Well, last year and the year before, we started this process of what we needed to do additionally to that once the middle runways tore out. And again, those things were the south ramp. We want to tear it out and expand it, and Kessin will talk about that in a moment. An additional new hangar, because that's always important to have, not just for us, but for military aircraft to use. And then, of course, they called it some kind of workstation. I call it a radar, pretty basic. So an improved radar over there. So because we're going to have a lot of aircraft over there, a lot of potential T-38, T-7, whatever the new aircraft is. So we went out to attack that, and it was, it's not just going out for money, because we actually on this time we kind of created methods for us to go out and get money. But before I go through that and tell you where we're at on all of those, you can't do it without a good team, and we have the Advanced Development Authority, and there are key people on that because of certain things, whether it's education, housing, all kinds of different things that we have people specific on there to help bring skills to that so we understand and work better at focus on the important things. So, but first I wanted to thank, I know Lisa Powell's not your ED person anymore, but she's always been very helpful. Your assistant city manager, Scott Morris, Stephen Puckett, of course, he's a grant writer, you do all that. And Kessin, of course, he's got more work than, we probably ought to all go out there and help him a little bit. So, but I just wanted to say thank you to all those people up front, because there's been a lot of media about the successes that we're having, and those things don't just happen. And it isn't just me or VDA or any one person. So it takes a good effort to do that. But I wanted you to know that we had to go out and create language in the National Defense Authorization Bill. We changed some language at the state level to make us be able to go and get some of these grants. So first thing we did, working with INHOF, we changed the Office of Economic Adjustment, made it in statute, so it would be a regular programmed item, so it would always be in the budget. No one could ever take it away, because the Secretary of Defense and the Pentagon were always trying to eliminate it. That organization is the organization that works between the Department of Defense and the states and communities. Jay Sweat was here the other day to talk to all of you all on how we're going to spend this money for the grant that we got. So that was one of the first things we did. So took the language, gave it to INHOF, he got it passed. Next thing, we changed language to what they call IGSAs, Intergovernmental Support Agreements, and it gave the communities and defense could work agreements to build and do things that was 5 years. We changed it to 10 so they could do larger projects. Now, we haven't done one yet, but trust me, there'll be a time in the future when we do. The next thing we did, which was important to what we're doing now, is we created the Defense Community Infrastructure Program, because there's a lot of needs that the services have, Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and all that, leveraging state and community dollars, marry it up with federal dollars to get things done that the departments couldn't spend, couldn't get done otherwise, so they didn't have the money. So again, INHOF worked with him, sat down with his people. We created that. It's now a 10-year program. We're in the third year. It's been about 90 to 95 million, but it's up to 100 million a year for 10 years. Now you can apply for grants to do that. And again, we have a great grant writer over here, so you ought to thank him for his efforts. But So we did all of that, and again, at the state level, we changed the, this when I was still on the Military Planning Commission, we went and changed language in the pooled financing piece through the Department of Commerce, how they leverage dollars to incent businesses to grow and expand and all that. We just simply added military, that you need to be able to allow those same kind of incentives on military installations. Very easy change. I mean, the language change was fairly easy, but politically to get it done was very hard. So we did do that. So if you think about those programs, and it's kind of funny because we actually created methods so we had the ability to go out and get grants. So you see what we did at the state level through that program. We're going to have $4.5 million to do those projects out at Woodring. Through the federal program, DSIP, we now know, as you've all heard, we're going to get $2.8 million through that. So it's well over $7 million that we're going to be able to leverage through those items that we created, through those entities that we created to be able to get these things done. So that's really good. Hats off to all these guys. I know Keston, you guys may want to hear a little bit of timing on how those projects, if you had not, Keston, you want to kind of briefly explain that? How are you going to spend all that money?
Yes, so most of these projects are well on the way on the planning side of it and engineering. So we've gotten back our 50% plans and specs from our engineering consultant. We've reviewed those and did some minor changes to them. And we should hopefully have those 100% done end of this month, early next month is the hope. Be able to go out for bid at that time and hopefully start the project at the start of the year. Of course, it'll depend a little bit on some of the environmental stuff that DSIP or the OLDCC is asking for. So if they need some additional environmental work done, some of that will push it off potentially up to a month, month and a half. But we're waiting to hear back on their final NEPA resolutions. Glad to answer any questions about the project, though.
And the radar thing, did you want to explain how that works?
Yeah, so that one's a little bit more difficult. So we have $2 million from the P3 grant to purchase a TDW, is what's called Tower Display Workstation. It's basically just a radar repeater of what Vance has over to our tower. Right now, we have authorization from the FAA to put into our tower, or their tower actually, they own it, a TDW if we can purchase one. The problem being is nobody sells them anymore. It's kind of, the one that the FAA uses has entered its end of life, so they've let their Raytheon contract go away. So Raytheon no longer produces them. So you can't really find them out there. There are some alternatives that the FAA is looking at potentially authorizing, but they are in the early stages of seeing if they are acceptable to use in towers. So there's potential that we could potentially get one of those early case study type models, but so far we haven't gotten any determination on that.
And Dan Hillebrand and Don Archer out of Inhoff's office set me up a month and a half ago with the FAA leadership so we could get that authority to do that. Now, they're also working with us, and I know Colonel Johnson and out at the folks out at Vance through the Air Force are looking at, well, what's the options, because they're trying to develop a new radar, and so I think, we're kind of waiting on timing of all of that, what it may be. And of course, we're still got our feelers out because occasionally something comes available. So, but there is something new being developed, so we're kind of waiting on all of that. So,
Most funding that comes from the government has to be spent within certain periods of time. So what does that timeline look like, and are we going to be okay with that?
The P3 grant is a 5-year.
5-year, okay.
I think we're still
the
within.
state.
Yeah, that's the state.
Yeah, that's the one for the state. It's a little more
Yeah.
restrictive on the federal level with the state.
Okay.
That's where those dollars come from. So again, great project. I know he's got a lot to do, and we met with Jay Sweat, who's the program manager for that effort and that grant. So between Keston and working with Steve, he's, like I say, there's more data behind all of the grant criteria that you and I probably, he's read it all. He knows it. So Steve, is there anything you want to explain about that, or you feel good about all that you have going on?
You guys covered everything I had, unless anyone has any questions. I'd be happy to answer questions for you.
I just would like Keston to talk a little bit more about the South Ramp part of this project because it benefits the military and the general aviation community. And the general aviation has had a massive need for some new hangars out there, and we're able to get something that benefits Vance and general aviation that we haven't been able to get for GA.
Yes, so this will be massive for our GA tenants out here. This will probably be the first hangar development, or definitely will be the first hangar development for general aviation, small general aviation aircraft in probably 50 years now at the airport. And the last hangars that we erected out there were those port-to-port hangars. If you've ever been out to the airport, they're on the south side, and they're less than desirable, but they keep the hail and the sun off your plane. But this will give us the opportunity to tear those out and actually put out brand new, modern, up-to-date hangars. They'll be nice with electric bifold doors and everything on them, which is always very desirable for our tenants, as well as reconstruct that ramp, which we use quite a bit for the military. If you've been onto the airport and down to the south ramp and you look at it, it just looks bad. It had a crack sealing project probably 10 years ago, which was done with black tar, which is it's cheaper and it's effective. It just doesn't look as good. So you see it and you think, oh, this doesn't look very good. So it'll be very exciting to kind of tear all that out and put it down with new actual concrete and with how it's supposed to look like.
Justin, what's the timeline on that?
So we're hoping to start that start of the year, January. The ramp portion, the concrete portion of it should be done in about 4 months is what we're hoping.
So they were running some new water lines or sewer lines or both? One of these consent items was on that. Can you elaborate on that at all? Or
That's another great news story. That's going to serve some of those hangars out there that don't have water and sewer.
Yeah, so that's so we are running water and sewer lines over to a group of 5 on the north side of the airport that had previously not had access to water or sewer lines. So it's a real short run from where our main hangar group is up to that, along the taxiway up to that north group of hangars. So that'll be different than this project, but also something else that's going on.
But then that means then they could, if they wanted to, they could put in a restroom in their hangar,
Yes. Mhm.
which
Absolutely.
has not been the case for
Previously.
ever.
Yeah.
That's a good deal.
Yes.
It's the golden era.
Yes.
Not just at Woodring, but in the
Indoor plumbing.
Yes.
Indoor plumbing.
What an exciting idea. Okay.
All right. Well, and again,
Okay. Thanks,
these
Kessler.
guys doing great work. So a lot going on. And again, Woodring, though, if you think about it, between all the efforts that we're doing here, I know the Crosswind One-Way is another, major improvement to Woodring. So once all this work's done, I know they'll sell a lot of fuel. So that's a good money maker too for them. So it's one of those. It's good for everybody. It's not just good for Vance, but it's also good for the community. So all that's going on. Feel real comfortable that those are proceeding real well. One of the projects that we did, we haven't heard about it for a while, but when we created the legislation for airspace protection to protect and get wind turbines placed correctly and all that. Well, once we did that, because we work so closely with OEA, used to be Patrick O'Brien, the director, they wanted to help the communities that were really working hard on airspace protection, and they have developed an airspace mapping tool. It's an online tool that developers and others, all of us, can actually eventually go online and utilize that to see where the ranges are, the runways, exits and out of not just military installations, but civilian as well, and then all the military training ranges that they have. So they'll be able to look at it and see where or not they should be developing or not, so it kind of eliminates a lot of problems. It was a $1.5 million grant that we got, Aeronautics Commission. That is now complete. Matrix is the entity that created that. It's taken them about 2 years to get it all developed. You'll see, and I told Keston today, we'll get Grayson Arties and the Aeronautics Commission come up here and train some folks so we kind of all know, how to utilize it and all that. So that's a good addition as well to our airspace protection efforts. One of the other things, Gerald is always making sure I have more than just Vance stuff, so this is kind of an infrastructure. Your Call Lake, we've tried to stay in tune with where the dollars were at on that. And as you know, you got two $4.5 million grants that are running through the budget process now. Congressman Lucas, because of his leadership capability, and then with working with Congressman Cole through appropriations, we've been able to get, and these are earmarks. You know, they quit doing earmarks, but these are earmarks that are in the budget from a Republican in the minority. Because of his leadership, he was able to get these in. One for Call Lake, the other one for your
Ames Fields.
yeah, Ames, you know, pipeline stuff as you merge the water and all that. So I don't understand all of it. I understand the money, but I understand that. Well, anyway, those two projects are in there. As long as they don't do a CR or continuing resolution where they don't finish the budget this year and they would roll it over to the next Congress, which would be a disaster for us. So we've been trying to make sure that it stays in the omnibus. Lucas's staff person was here today, and also Langford's, and we'll continue to follow that the next few weeks. It should know for sure the week of December 12th. I'm hopeful that there's a lot of leadership on the House and Senate of senators and congressmen. Senator Shelby is retiring, Inhoff's retiring. The NDAA is named after Inhoff, and Shelby, it's his last. He's the minority leader on the budget in the Senate. So I think, you know, there's pretty good reason that they will complete that. If so, we will get those two because they are in. There won't be any debate. The only thing would be if it's a CR, they can't add or do anything different, so those would fall out. So, but I'm hopeful we'll continue to follow that. And Lucas and Cole have kind of assured me that they feel, you know, we can get that through. A couple of things also in addition to all these things. Of course, I always, you know, follow the Association of Defense Communities. They just had a conference in Phoenix. At those conferences, one reason it's important, so we're always connected to the leadership in the Pentagon. The Installation, Environment, and Energy Secretary was there, Mr. Oshiba, and the Installation Secretary for the Air Force, Moriarty, were there, so I hosted them for lunch. And of course, we thanked them about our projects. Secretary Moriarty is the one that sat on the panel for the Secretary of Defense to select the DSIP grants for the Air Force. And of course, ours was like, I don't know, probably 1, 2 top. So he was very familiar. I didn't need to tell him. He knew I was from Vance and Enid, so he could talk as much about our grant as you could. So that was good. Air Force Association had their conference a little bit before that. It's their annual conference where they bring the secretary and the chiefs and all of those folks in. And so we got to hear, you know, kind of the direction of the Air Force and all that. So I think those things, we talked a little bit about VDA today, talking about the next goals that we'll have, and then it'll be kind of short range, long range plans again for next year. And a lot of it centers around Milcon, because as all of you know, and I've talked to your boss, and General Robinson went to see him in San Antonio. And of course, the thing we need is we need something in the FIDEP, or the 5-year plan. The squad ops facility is in, you know, it's probably the 3rd or 4th top rated unfunded project, but it's not in the FIDEP. So the way we get things, we can either help them be able to get projects like that if it is in the FIDEP, because it has to be in there before it can be considered for a congressional ad or an earmark. And there's still limited ability to do that at the moment, unless the next Congress cancels it. Or we get it in a regular program budgeted item, and we know that we have some housing dorm issues, things like that. So those are the things that for us to be able to help them more, and General Robinson understood that as well. So that you'll see us do a lot more work on that. There's some quality of life issues dealing with education criteria on how the Air Force scores that sort of thing in strategic basing process, but it's just something that we want to be able to do. So our superintendent, that's why he's on VDA. We'll look through all that criteria and see if there's some things we need to improve. So I think I've kind of covered the list, but again, I wanted to thank the team that we have. We've got a lot of projects coming this way, and there's a lot of money coming this way, so that's all good. So it's not Santa Claus, but it's the next best thing.
We already had Santa Claus.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Any questions?
Well, I'd just like to say, Mike, thank you so much for your work. I've never known you to be a guy to just sit on your hands, and this is certainly a time where we've taken the initiative to go find a way and make things happen. And sometimes you plant seeds and you water them and you don't ever get to see any fruit come of it, but we've hit it on all cylinders just here recently, so we're coming through on all of it. So well done, and thank you for your continued work and effort and communication over the past 3 years. Third time's the charm.
It's worked.
So we got it.
Yeah.
Inhoff's glad that since we did get a DSIP for Oklahoma before he left the Senate, so that's a good thing, so.
Speaking of that, Mike, who's going to close the gap?
Well, as you know, and going back, you sit here and you look at our congressional delegation, while we have good people, they're all good, but they it's all leadership's based on seniority, so we're kind of weakened at the moment, and we have, Cole and Lucas are very senior, but when you have two senators that are new, one in his first, just served his first term, because I kind of look at it generally, and everybody's got their own opinion of it, it's almost, for a senator, it takes 2 terms. That's 12 years. These guys are brand new. So, it's going to be very difficult. One of our 2 senators, I think, we've been working this. I hope that, it's not a given, but I hope that we get one of them on the Armed Services Committee, because that'll be very helpful to us if we do. But it's not a given, so it's going to be difficult. But if we get them on, and we have a Congressman Bice is on the Armed Services in the House, so.
Yep.
Certainly wouldn't want to be having a BRAC right now. It'd be tough. All right.
Okay. Nothing else? Okay, thanks, Mike.
Okay,
Appreciate it. Item 3.2.
Took care of that, too.
I think we did that. DSIP grant. Item 3.3, discuss proposed updates to city's finance procedure manual. Aaron, I think you're up.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. It's been a long time since we've done this. Our last update for the Finance Procedure Manual was in September of 2007, so it's time that we make some updates and changes to get us all on the same page and have some good guidance where everybody knows what's going on with it. Main purposes of doing this update that we're asking for is to come in compliance with Oklahoma state statutes. There's been some changes over that time period that need to be incorporated. As you know, October the 4th, also there was an ordinance that was passed locally that incorporated some of those state statute changes, and so they also needed to be pushed through the book and updated on that. We are also asking for a change in spending authority, and as we get to those sections, we'll talk about what those are. Currently, our manual does not address the purchasing card program that we have, and we would like to add that in so that the guidelines are there for everybody to know in the place that it should reside going forward. We want to remove all forms from this document. We want to be able to have that flexibility to update as we need to, just have those forms available on the portal for all the department heads and users of those forms. And then there's just a few clarifications and grammatical changes that need to happen too as we go through and update this. There are 15 different sections in the manual. None of them are that long, but just want to generally talk through what the sections are and what changes we're recommending in each of the sections. So the first section is general provisions, a lot of definitions, and there are just a few changes on this one. The definitions are updated in this to match the ordinance that was passed in October by you guys. The other change on this is to authorize the Director of Finance as the Director of Purchasing. In the current ordinance that you just passed, that authorization is given to the city manager, and so this would allow him to delegate that authority to the Director of Finance or whoever he sees fit to hold up and carry out all of the things that are in this manual to make sure that we're abiding by those. Another thing that's throughout the manual in a few places, it refers to the Director of Public Works, and now we have split Public Works into Public Works and Public Utilities, so we just want to also recognize the roles and responsibilities of that Public Utilities Director as well, and add that in. And then there was a few changes requested by the legal department on the conflict of interest, and those are in the red line version that you have before you. They're minor changes. Section 2 is where we get into supplies and contractual services. The sealed bid limit was changed from 50 to 100,000. So right now we have this difference between what the ordinance says we can do and what procedurally we say we can do. So we just need to update that so we match the ordinance. We're going to update the performance bonds on here. The update is to basically say if we have a contract that's for X amount of dollars, their performance bonds will at least cover the amount of their contract. Right now, it's kind of silent on what those limits need to be, and just want to give guidance so that we have coverage on a contract if anything were to go the way of needing bonds. Updated solicitation for bids, that's just a standard form that we put in every bid packet, and there were just a couple minor changes that the city clerk required or requested that we would like to have on there. We're already doing them, but the form just hasn't been updated, so I want to include those. Amounts on open market purchases. Currently, our limits for open market purchases are up to $2,500. We have to have open market, and then from $2,500 to $5,000 we can have verbal quotes, and from $5,000 up to $50,000 we have to have written quotes, and then over $50,000 is sealed bids. And what we're wanting to do is remove verbal quotes as an option. Doesn't offer the best protection for the city, and I think that it's maybe kind of an outdated practice in the world that we're in and with the audit requirements that we have. We're proposing that open market be up to $5,000, and then from $5,000 to $100,000 we have written quotes, and then over the $100,000 we have the sealed bids that's in the ordinance that you just passed last month. So is there questions on any of those limits? I know it's probably one of the biggest changes that we're recommending as far as impacting. I know we have a lot of requests from department heads to increase that limit. The amount of things that they could do in 2007 for $2,500 is a lot more than what they can do today for $2,500. And for them to be able to get through and get things expedited that they need to be able to take care of within their purview at the department head level before it has to come and get a purchase order, it would be good for them to have a little more flexibility and leeway to be able to get those things done. So that's why we're asking for the request to up the amount for open market purchases going forward. And then the one other change in this section is to increase the emergency amount to match the ordinance. It increased from $100,000 to $150,000. And that's just, again, matching that ordinance that we passed last month. Section 3.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
And it's more towards engineering. Would it, by upping the cost from $100,000 to $150,000, would it actually be helpful to like the engineer department when you have change orders and those type of things? Would it speed up the process?
I think that's only for the.
That's only for emergency purchases.
Okay.
And that's the city manager's limit, where we're talking about that in this section, where he has 10 days to notify you of any emergencies that exceed his authority. He has up to 150 now. I do think that it will make a difference in some contracts for engineering, going from that 50 to 100,000, which has already been approved in the ordinance last month, but we just need to roll it through here so everything's matching.
Okay. The reason why, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just thinking like if we had an emergency water main break or something like that, unforeseen, would that help the engineering department to be able to make that? I mean, the decision would be on you, but would it?
I think the amount's helpful. To be frank, 150 for stuff isn't a whole lot either. So if it exceeded that, we'd be coming to you and we'd schedule a special meeting or something to deal with the problem.
Right, but a perfect example is the Hayes water line that we just had. It came in at 52 or 53,000, so it would have been over that $50,000 mark, but now that we're raising it to 100, we could just take care of that within that $100,000 limit.
Just to remind everybody, this was the massive spill on Garriott.
Yes.
That had to be addressed immediately.
Yes.
Was addressed immediately. I will say, to answer your question, Commissioner, the open market stuff, from going from 50 to 100 would be very helpful for getting things done. I know many times there's frustration with all of us about why does it take so long to get stuff done? Well, this is a way, at that spending level or lower to get stuff done faster. Sealed bids, as you know, is a process that takes, statutorily, I think it takes 20 days with extra time for advertising. So essentially, we say it's 30 to 45 days to get anything to bid and get it to you guys to approve it. So I think if you're asking that, yes, I think this will make a big difference. Again, in relatively, $100,000 is a lot of money, but in what we deal with the problems we deal with, it's an amount of money that lets us solve smaller problems, and we leave the bigger problems to bidding and coming to you guys.
Absolutely. So Section 3 is the Public Competitive Bidding Act, and all of these are matching exactly to state statute. We're increasing the sealed bid limit to $100,000, removing the irrevocable letter of credit, which was removed by state statute. And then we increase the interest rate, which is in Title 61. If there's disputes on contracts with contractors and we're waiting to resolve that, there's a statutory limit of interest that we have to pay them on those. And so we've updated that. And then again, the same emergency amount here for the city manager is increased to 150 per that ordinance. Sections 4 and 5 are really more of how we process things in-house with requisitions and purchase orders. So we're again requesting to remove the forms, updating the amounts for the purchasing limits, again, up to $5,000 open market, and then written quotes for $5,000 to $100,000. Over $100,000 comes to you guys on the agenda. And then we want to add a requirement for start and end dates on work performed on invoices. This is one where we've had a lot of problems getting that information, and we're required to have it by our auditors. And so this just helps clean that up for us. So when we do our financial statements, they're in accordance with GAAP.
Okay.
Section 6 with contracts, there are a couple changes. Again, the amount from 50 to 100, it's in here a lot of times. We're adding the city manager as an approved signer. In the manual as it sits right now, it says that the city commission will approve all contracts. Well, you guys have given him, or the city manager, authority up to $100,000 at this point. So we just wanted to clean that up and add city manager in there so that depending on the level of the contract, it references the correct person. And then we're adding in language from Oklahoma statute on the approval of electronic signatures. There's always questions. Does it work? Does it not work for electronic signatures? So we're just going to put that reference in there. It does work for electronic signatures, and we want everybody to know that, so we're adding that in. And then adding also the all contracts reside with the city clerk. We have a lot of contracts that may not always make it. It may be a $2,000 contract that doesn't make it on file, but just clarifying that any contract that's signed by the city manager or any designee of the city needs to be on file in the city clerk's office so that anybody can be able to find that. So just clarifying. Section 7, professional services. Updating the amounts again, and then there's a whole section in here on representation and payment of judgments and costs of legal proceedings. It has to do with city employees, and really and truly this is not the correct place for that to be. We're asking to remove that entire section. We have personnel policies and legal documents that deal with how we handle employees and judgments, and this is not the place for that, so we're asking to remove that as well. Section 8 is intergovernmental purchasing. The only thing that we're requesting here is to see the approved list of purchasing co-ops in the office of the city clerk. A lot of department heads may have talked to a salesman who says, well, we're on this contract or that contract, and it may not be an approved one. And so that they know where to go to get that approved listing at any time that they need it. Accounts payable, again, just updating the amounts to be consistent throughout the book. Section 10, standardizations and specifications whenever we do requests for proposals. And there's just some clarifying on what the user department should do when they're researching, not only looking at RFPs and what they're wanting to do, but also searching out what options we have available on the co-ops that we're on, because sometimes it will give them other ideas that they may not necessarily have thought of. So just pointing them in that direction to do some of that legwork before coming in and being ready to give that to the city clerk to have that approved to go out to bid. And then we've also added a timeline of when it needs to be to the city clerk's office so that she can advertise in all the places needed and to meet the deadline and requirements for that. And so giving a 45-day window to her from the time that she receives it until the bid opening so that we can meet all those requirements for publication. Petty cash is the next section. We updated the purpose of the petty cash to better spell it out. We use petty cash less and less every year with that purchasing card program that we have. But pretty much to reimburse employees for expenditures up to $300. If it's over $300, it goes through the accounts payable process. We removed reference to the Cherokee Strip Conference Center that we're in here and removed forms. We added in that Oklahoma sales tax will not be reimbursed. That's a constant thing that we deal with, and so we just want it to be addressed specifically in the mail. And then we're clarifying some deadlines. If you're just asking for reimbursement, the timeline is 30 days from the date that you submit the request. If you are having an advance of petty cash because you need the money in advance to be able to go, then you have 7 days after you get back to give us the receipts and any money that's unspent, just so that we don't have money floating out there for a long period of time. Section 12, travel. This probably had the most changes of any of the sections. Again, removing all the forms, addressing again sales tax in this, adding that we have travel purchasing cards and that that's the preferred method if people are going to travel with the city, that they use those P cards so that we don't have to deal with reimbursements and all of that after the fact. We're asking for an increase to the meal allowance from $50 a day to $60 a day, and that's consistent with what the GSA or the General Service Administration uses for our area. And then the same type of timelines where we're allowing 30 days for travel reports to be submitted after you get back. We added city attorney to the section that addresses city manager and council travel, so that the city attorney also falls under those same rules. We removed the mileage rate that was in there from 2007 and just referenced that it will be set by the IRS mileage rate. And then we also removed some outdated things, telephone charges, audio tape, incidental expenses, things that aren't used and really won't be used going forward. People don't call long distance, they just call on their cell phone, so there's no charges there. And then also addressing rental car insurance. We have some people who do that. It's covered under our insurance policy, so we're just going to make that known that we won't reimburse rental car insurance if someone rents a car. It will be covered by our regular insurance policy. And then we removed all per diem references. It's kind of in there. We've never done per diem. We've always done it just strictly reimbursement, so we're just removing all of those references that were in there.
On the one increased meal allowance from 50 a day to 60 a day, that's just locally, or is that everywhere? I mean, if you're in Washington DC, you're not going to eat
We
for
kept
60.
the language that says if you're going to a high-cost area, you can get approval for a higher amount than that.
Okay.
But just in general, if you're traveling for the day in Oklahoma or
Okay.
Texas, around here in the Midwest, it's
Yeah.
probably
No,
going
it's
to be
sufficient.
sufficient. Yes.
Good, thank you.
Disposal of property, this is section 13, again, just adding that director of public utilities in there. Adding that we can advertise on an auction company's website and not just the City of Enid website. Now, we do have that link to ours, but just to clarify that their website is a way that we can dispose of assets that have been declared surplus. Clarification on disclosure of conditions and items being auctioned. In the manual currently, it states that we will put everything back into good working condition to get rid of something. That's not always practical. Sometimes we wouldn't get back the money we put into things, so we're just asking that we do a fair disclosure of the state of the items that we're selling so that we are not misplacing funds.
Yeah.
The police department gave us a very thorough update of what they wanted and needed on abandoned and confiscated property for police, and we've incorporated all the changes that they desire to be in compliance with state statute and how they handle things on day-to-day with confiscated property today. And then we have section 14 is fixed assets and how we handle that. We're just clarifying some responsibilities between fleet and finance and department heads, who's doing what roles as far as notifying us of new assets or disposing of assets or transferring them between one department and another. We're removing the forms again, and we're adding a useful life table. This is something we've been asked for several times by our auditors, and we kind of just have it scribbled down, but we thought it'd be good to add it to the manual so we have what our depreciation schedule is for different types of assets. And then section 15, purchasing card section, pretty much taken the agreements that we have in place now and added those so we have a purpose, what the department head responsibilities are, the cardholder responsibilities are, and how travel cards work and who's responsible for doing what for those travel cards. So those are the recommended changes we have. Glad to answer any questions that you have on the manual update.
No, it's a lot of work there, so appreciate that. It was time to update it.
Yes, it is time. We plan to bring that back at the next meeting to adopt by resolution, and then roll it out to our employees with some training and go forward.
Okay. All righty, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we've already done item 3.4, so we are ready to adjourn. So reconvene again at 6:30?
I have something.
Yeah.
I would like to bring back the trail system.
Okay.
I would like, I don't know where the connection from where it ends on the south end of town to getting it up to Crossland Park. I don't know whether there's a plan to do that. If there is, I'd just like to revisit that. If there's not, I'd like to see the engineering guys put something together before we study it, some feasibility. So, because I know Ben Ezell was a very big proponent of the trail system, and we have let it pretty well lapse in our discussions about future parts of it. We've done some with out to the south, going to Vance, but I don't want it to stop. I want it to continue forward, and the work along Cleveland is going to give us an opportunity possibly to have some trail added. I don't know whether that's in there or not, or if that's part of the plan, but that's why I would like to see it. So.
Good. Yes, I think that's an easy item. We do have a trail master plan, so I think it'll be easy to bring that in. The trail master plan, I think, dates back to about 2012 or something like that. It's on the website, but we can refresh everybody on it. And generally, every major road project, we include a piece of the trail. In fact, great news, the Golden Era in Enid, on tonight's agenda, Commissioner Orr, there's a piece of the trail up there in your ward. You know where it's at, right?
On which one?
Prairie View.
By Prairie View School?
That is a piece of the trail that will go, it'll end up being part of the trail. It'll go from Oakwood all the way over to the school, and eventually, well, actually, we do have Oakwood and Willow connected. Oakwood and Cleveland.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to elaborate some more, Raleigh? Please do.
Well, I think maybe we ought to bring this back to another study session. We're probably getting beyond what's on the agenda for tonight, so I don't want to be in violation.
We will do that.
But I think it's a good point. I'd like to see also maybe a study session proposal that goes through the whole thing. And that way they'll have the information fresh for us instead of, well, I think it's, so let's do that. Can you put that on?
Absolutely, and if there's any other, at any time, study session topics, please let me know. And we're happy to work on them or update them or bring them forward. You're smiling, Raleigh. You know who's going to get that one, don't you?
It's a softball, buddy.
Very capable.
Yes, and we do have a master plan, so that's good news.
All right. Anybody else have anything? If not, we are adjourned, and we'll see you at 6:30.